All right, today we're gonna be doing some product photography. We're gonna be shooting an incredible bottle of luxury hot sauce. This is called Olivium hot sauce. This bottle is beautiful, and we have to make this image look absolutely perfect. Yesterday, I shot this bottle on black, and all last night and this morning, I worked in Photoshop. I got it looking great. As you can see, I cut the bottle out, and I can put any dark background behind it, and it looks awesome. But if you try to put a light background behind it, it looks horrible. So today I'm going to do the exact same shot on white, and I'm going to take you through the entire process to show you how you can do it yourself with a very minimal amount of gear. Now in the past, when I would shoot a bottle like this, I would try to get it all right in camera because I was a professional photographer and I had to get it right in camera. I don't think like that anymore. I don't care about how I got the shot. I don't care if it was all done in camera or all done in Photoshop. And I actually think the easiest way to get the best results is to shoot a ton of different pictures on location with a moving light, just one light, and then we will pick the best shots and composite them together back on the computer. Let me show you. I'm shooting on a Sony a7 IV. This is the Tamron 70 to 180 millimeter lens. I think I'm shooting at around 100 millimeters. And we've got a Pro Photo remote here, and we're going to be lighting this thing up with some Pro Photo B1s. So what this is a V-flat World V-flat, and it's reversible. It's black on one side, white on the other. Let's flip this around. So as you can see here, I've got white. It doesn't have to be perfectly white. In fact, a little bit of gray would probably be good. To get a reflection under the bottle, I just have a piece of glass here. This glass is not in very good shape, but we're gonna be doing a lot of Photoshop, so I can get those scratches out pretty easily. So here's our bottle. So it's super important that when we're taking product photos, the product and the camera do not move at all. I don't want to touch this camera. I don't even want to touch the shutter button. So I'm going to be controlling the camera with this app called Monitor Plus. This allows me to change my settings and use the shutter release button from my phone here, and I never have to touch anything. Now, it doesn't really matter where I begin, but I think the label's the most important, so that's gonna be my first shot. To get the label looking good, I'm going to either use a bare bulb or I'm gonna use one of these, a grid here, and this just allows me to focus the light directly onto the label, and so it's not gonna spill on the rest of the bottle. Okay, I just realized my first issue here. I'm lighting this bottle so close that my background is going to a really dark gray, which we cannot have. So although I thought I could shoot this with a single light, and I guess I could if I wanted to change my settings and everything, it's going to be easier if I put a second light on the background and just keep it bright for every single shot. Now, keep in mind, I am using very expensive lighting. You don't have to use Pro Photo or even, these studio strobes. You could easily do this with cheap speed lights as well. Okay, so now I've got a mostly white background, which is exactly what I want. Let's go back to shooting the label. And I'll do a few without the grid here. All right, we've got the label. Let's move on to some shoulder highlight lines. Now, I could do this with a bare bulb, but I think I'm going to get a better result with a strip box. And I have a small strip box here. This is a 1x3 Pro Photo strip box. And I have the ability to get one side correct and then just duplicate it on the other side. But I'm still going to shoot both sides. It just gives me more options. And sometimes I like having variety. It makes it look a little bit more realistic if it's not totally perfect. So I'm gonna shoot both sides, and I'm just gonna wrap around this as I shoot to give me options. It's just going to change where that highlight is falling. All right, I am shooting an f/16. You would think the entire bottle would be in focus, but it's actually not. I'm focused on the front of the bottle, but if I wanna shoot the top of the bottle and that really impressive lid on top, I actually need to refocus and do shots just for that part. So that's what I'm going to do now. I have the camera set to manual focus, and then I do not want the autofocus changing as I'm taking pictures. So remember, the first shot that I took was the label, but there's two labels. There's a label up here too that I wasn't properly focused on. So now I'm going to get the top label looking good. All right, I've got the top label. Now I'm going to move up to the metal pourer on top. This chrome is reflecting everywhere in this room. So instead of using the softbox, I'm going to try to light this up by bouncing this light into the ceiling. All right, I think we're all done here. That was the easy part. Now for the difficult part. I have to find the best shots and put them together. This is where kind of like your artistic vision and how much patience you have really comes into play. Let's quickly talk about today's sponsor, which is AC/DC. Now, I'm about to use a lot of Photoshop, but we always get complaints from people saying like, I don't know how to use Photoshop. Photoshop's so expensive. I only want to use Photoshop for this one thing, but they're trying to lock me in for an entire year. Are there other options? And that's where Photo Studio Ultimate comes in, because this software not only is a replacement for Photoshop, it's also a replacement for Lightroom. You can easily cull through all of your images. You can rate them and categorize them. You can do global edits to them just like you can in Lightroom, and every single thing that I'm about to do in Photoshop, you can do in Photo Studio Ultimate. Now, this software is way cheaper than Photoshop. It doesn't lock you into monthly payments. You can buy it outright if you want to, but you don't have to spend anything to try it. There's a 2-week free trial. Click on the link below. Try it out for yourself. Okay, we've got a lot of images to get through. Let's first start with the label. I'm just gonna go through these one by one, and I'm going to find a label that I like the most. Remember, I'm only looking right here. All right, I think this is my favorite label here. I'm going to right click and edit in Photoshop. So as you can tell here, we have lots of cleaning up to do, so give me a few minutes. Okay, I've got the label looking pretty good, but I think I can get this logo looking a little bit more uniform. I'm just gonna come in and dodge this. And I can do that with the dodge tool here, and I can set it to midtones and highlights. And it's not gonna affect the dark gray as much. I really just need to hit the O and the M. Before, after, before, after. It's looking pretty good. Now, one thing I'm not happy with are the highlights that you can see, especially on pepper here. So in this shot, I feel like pepper and sauce look really good. So I'm gonna send this over to Photoshop, and I can just select all and then paste this. And ideally, it's perfectly lined up because our camera did not move. But I'm pretty sure that the only way that I'm going to be able to select the letters is to kind of paint this in manually. I am going to hold the Option key when I press the mask button here, and it's going to fill it in with black, and then I can paint with white on this layer here, and it will reveal only what I'm painting. And I really just dislike these really white spots. All right, I think that looks way better. All right, so we got the label now. Let's move on to this shoulder line here. I just need to find the best looking shoulder line. Right click, edit in Photoshop. Select all, copy, and drop it on top. All right, I'm just going to highlight or select where this highlight is. Hit the mask button here. And let's change the blend mode to lighten. And then the rest of this that looks weird, just gonna paint this out. Now I could copy this highlight and just duplicate it over here, but let's see if I can find another highlight that looks cool that we actually shot on the other side. All right, I think this is my favorite top label here. We'll move this into Photoshop. All right, I've got a lot of cleanup work to do everywhere. I'm just gonna hold off and do that last. Let's move on to the top here. All right, I think this is the best lid. One thing that's a little weird with this composite is we have these really nice shoulder line reflections here, but nothing down here. And it's really weird because when I shot this on black, I was getting these reflections very easily, but they showed up in almost no pictures on white for whatever reason. I found this little highlight here, so I'm going to grab that and throw it in, just so we have a little highlight on each side. So I'm first going to copy it, and then I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontally. Okay, this is a pretty good baseline here. I'm going to leave all of these layers just in case I ever have to go back. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flatten this to a new layer and I'm going to cut it out. Okay, now what we can do is we can make a selection. I'm just going to feather by 1 pixel. And I'm going to copy and paste. I'll go ahead and hide that original background, create a new layer, drop it below that copied one we just made, and let's fill it in with white. All right, now it's time to get nitty-gritty with the retouching here. This is going to be a beautiful montage because this is going to take a while. The next thing that's bothering me is that the sauce up here is much brighter than the sauce down here. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut that out. All right, I'm going to make selection, feather by 5, and I'm just going to copy and paste it into its own layer. Then what I'm going to do is go to levels here, and we'll brighten it up. I think that looks pretty good, and I'm going to hold Option, create a mask, darken that up, and I'm just going to paint it back into taste. All right, so if this were a liquor bottle or a beer bottle, I would firelight behind it and make it glow in the studio. I tried it with the hot sauce, but it was too thick, so I'm just going to do it in Photoshop here. I'm going to grab just a big portion here right in the middle. I'm going to copy and paste that. We will brighten it up. And once again, create a mask and paint it out. All right, now to get the fade on this reflection down here, I'm just going to create a mask on this layer and get a big soft brush and just paint out this area. One last thing that's bothering me is this weird magenta shift in this highlight right here. I'm going to highlight all of this or select it all here. I'm going to copy and paste it so that it's on its own layer. I'm going to go to Image Adjustments, Replace Color. I'm going to find that purple color, and then I am going to brighten it and remove that saturation. All right, guys, we are done. This thing is looking good, and we did a lot of work to get it to this point, but now it's so easy to drop in bright white backgrounds, and the picture is going to look awesome no matter what you choose. So yes, it is a lot of work, but it's totally worth it because from now on, anytime I want to put this bottle on some sort of bright or dark background, I've got options. Now guys, I want to be perfectly honest with you. I did a ton of editing on this video to make that look easy and quick. That probably took me 3 hours to get that done. It is a very time-consuming process, but it is 100% worth it if you want to shoot really high-end products. You do a lot of work up front, but if you do it right, once you do, you can easily drop in backgrounds and everything's going to look great. Now, if it's a reflective object like my bottle was, you're going to have to do this twice, once on black and once on white. But once you do, it makes things so much easier. I can drop this on almost any background and it's going to look great within seconds. Once again, thanks to AC/DC for sponsoring this video. And if you happen to be a hot sauce fan or you know somebody who is, check out Alivium.com. And finally, if you're wondering how in the world I learned all of this, I can attribute everything I know about product photography to the tutorial The Hero Shot by Brian Rogers Jr. If you're interested in product photography and you want to do it at the highest level, I'll put a link to this tutorial down in the description below.